The moment the glass doors slid open, silence fell over the lobby. The woman in the ivory suit, flawless, confident, and every bit the face of elegance, stopped mid-step. Her sapphire eyes widened as her gaze fell on the little girl clutching a crumpled teddy bear near the reception desk. And just behind her, a man with tired eyes and grease-stained hands stepped forward. His voice, soft but steady, broke through the stunned stillness. "She's with me." The words cut through the air like truth itself, simple, fragile, and impossible to ignore. The billionaire's fiancée, Amelia Hart, froze in place. For a second, her perfectly composed world tilted. The cameras flashing, the journalist murmuring, the bodyguards glancing uncertainly, everything blurred. All she could see was the man she once loved, holding the daughter she never knew existed. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, take a moment now. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps us bring more stories that remind the world how love always finds its way home. Ethan Rowe had never expected to be in the same room with Amelia again. He was a single dad now, raising 7-year-old Sophie alone in a quiet suburb on the edge of town. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was real. He worked as a mechanic in a small garage he co-owned with an old friend. His hands were always rough, his clothes always faintly smelling of oil, but his heart was still soft when it came to Sophie. She was the reason he smiled even on the hardest days. Every morning before school, Sophie would sit at their old wooden table, eating cereal and humming while Ethan packed her lunch. Their apartment wasn't much, just a small space with sunlight that filtered through mismatched curtains, but it was filled with warmth. He'd tell her stories about dreams and kindness, reminding her that no matter how unfair the world could be, goodness always mattered. What Sophie didn't know was that Ethan once lived in a very different world, the world of Amelia Hart. Years ago, before life had turned upside down, he had fallen in love with her when they were both just starting out. He was a talented car designer at a luxury company. She was the marketing intern who believed in his dreams. They were inseparable. They made plans, whispered promises under city lights, and believed love would conquer everything. But when a scandal hit the company, a scandal Ethan was wrongly blamed for, Amelia's powerful father forced them apart. Ethan was fired, humiliated, and left broke. He waited for Amelia to call. She never did. He never knew she was pregnant, and when Sophie was born, it was under the care of a foster family. Ethan found out 2 years later through a miracle of fate, when a friend from social services called, saying a little girl with his eyes needed a home. He didn't hesitate. He took her in, adopted her legally, and promised her a life full of love. But fate, as always, had its own plans. On that bright afternoon, Ethan had taken Sophie to the city for a piano recital. She had practiced for weeks, her tiny fingers dancing over the keys like light itself. She wore a yellow dress she'd picked herself, saying it was a happy color. After the recital, Sophie spotted a poster outside a nearby hotel, Charity Gala, in support of orphaned children. Her eyes sparkled as she tugged on her dad's sleeve. "Daddy, can we just look inside? Maybe they'll help kids like me." Ethan smiled and agreed. They walked inside, unaware that the event belonged to Hart Industries, the empire Amelia now co-managed with her fiancé, billionaire architect Julian Cross. When Ethan saw Amelia standing under the golden chandeliers, giving a speech about compassion and opportunity, something inside him trembled. She looked radiant, powerful but different, colder somehow. Her voice carried the poise of a woman who'd learned to hide her heart behind perfection. Sophie, not knowing who she was, had wandered closer to the stage, and when reporters began crowding for photos, the little girl tripped and fell. Gasps echoed. The cameras turned. Ethan rushed forward, scooping her up gently just as Amelia's security stepped in. That's when his words came out before he could think, steady, quiet, full of all the years he had carried in silence. "She's with me." The world paused. Amelia's eyes met Sophie's, then Ethan's, and in that instant her carefully built life cracked. Julian glanced between them, confusion tightening his jaw, and though no one understood what was happening, Amelia did. The small, trembling child looked like a mirror of the man she once loved. For the rest of the day, everything felt unreal. After the commotion, Ethan tried to slip away quietly, but Amelia followed. Outside, beneath the golden afternoon sun, she called his name. He stopped, turning slowly. The city hummed in the background, but between them there was only silence. She asked who Sophie was. Ethan hesitated, then told her the truth. Everything. The betrayal, the lies, the missing years, the letter that never reached him, the child who needed a home and the father who couldn't let her go. Amelia's eyes filled with tears she hadn't shed in years. She told him she never knew about Sophie, that her father had hidden everything, forging documents to make Ethan disappear from her life. She had searched for him once, but by then he'd vanished from every record. She had moved on, or tried to. Her engagement to Julian had been more business than love. Now, standing before the man she once called her heart, all she could whisper was, "I didn't know." Ethan didn't blame her. He'd carried his anger for years, but seeing her broken and trembling, he realized forgiveness was heavier, but kinder. Over the next few weeks, Amelia began visiting quietly. She brought books for Sophie, small gifts, sometimes pastries from her favorite bakery. Sophie adored her instantly, calling her Miss Leah. Amelia, for her part, hid the truth for as long as she could, afraid that revealing she was Sophie's biological mother would destroy the fragile balance Ethan had built. But secrets never stay buried forever. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Sophie overheard Amelia and Ethan talking on the balcony. She heard Amelia's voice crack as she said, "She deserves to know." And that was how the truth came out. Not through a grand revelation, but through a child's quiet question. "You're my mom, aren't you?" Amelia broke down, dropping to her knees, sobbing as she held Sophie's small hands. Ethan stood still, eyes glistening with emotion he could barely contain. Sophie looked between them, her voice trembling. "Then why did you leave me?" Amelia couldn't answer. Ethan knelt beside her, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "She didn't know, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, or people around them do. But she's here now, and that's what matters." That night, the three of them sat on the couch together for the first time. No luxury, no titles, just a mother, a father, and the little girl who had unknowingly brought them back together. But life wasn't done testing them. When the media caught wind of the connection between Amelia and Ethan, tabloids erupted. "Billionaire's fiancée hides secret child with former mechanic," screamed the headlines. Julian's family demanded answers. Sponsors threatened to pull out of Hart Industries projects. Julian, though hurt, confronted Amelia privately. His words weren't cruel, just tired. "You never really loved me, did you?" She couldn't lie. He nodded, then quietly ended their engagement, saying, "Go find what's real, before it's too late." The next morning, Amelia resigned from the company. She showed up at Ethan's garage in jeans and sneakers for the first time in years. The workers froze as she walked in. She approached Ethan, who was fixing an engine, and said softly, "I don't know where I belong anymore, but if you'll let me try, maybe it's here." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "Then start by washing your hands. Oil stains don't forgive easily." She laughed, truly laughed, and something beautiful returned to her eyes. Weeks turned into months. Amelia began helping with the garage's finances, bringing in clients and organizing charity repairs for single parents and foster homes. Sophie grew happier than ever. On weekends, the three would drive to the coast, where Sophie would collect seashells and ask them to tell stories about how they met before the world got complicated. For the first time, Ethan and Amelia learned what love meant when it was stripped of pride and perfection. It wasn't grand gestures or wealth. It was shared lunches, late-night talks, and quiet forgiveness. It was choosing each other every single day, despite the past. One golden afternoon, Sophie played the piano in their apartment, while sunlight poured through the windows. Ethan sat beside Amelia, holding her hand. The melody floated softly, like a prayer answered too late, but still right on time. Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for letting me be part of her world." He smiled and whispered back, "She's not just with me anymore. She's with us."